Hello and welcome to Secrets of Aussie Online Entrepreneurs. I'm Bernadette Schwerdt and I have with me today Misha Ketchell from The Conversation. Welcome, Misha.
Hi.
Misha, let's get started with some basic information. How did The Conversation get started, and firstly, what is it?
Okay, The Conversation is a website which publishes articles written by academics and researchers. And it really was based around an idea about trying to get people who actually know what they're talking about involved in public debate. Too often you listen to the radio or you read articles online and there are people sort of expressing views or opinions who actually, haven't done the research, who haven't spent the time developing expertise in a particular area. And we felt that, for there to be a really good quality conversation in democracy, so whether it be about, say a policy on, asylum seekers or climate science or, regulation or economic policy, you actually need to have a good base of evidence and people who know what they're talking about. So the idea of the site is actually really about going to the experts and getting them involved in public conversation.
Excellent. So in terms of your audience, who do you perceive to be the key people that you want to target for this business?
Well, like any sort of media outlet, we're aiming for as wide an audience as we can possibly attract. We're currently getting around about 1.6 million unique browsers a month, which is a good figure. And really we want people who are just interested in getting the facts behind things. So, for example, when there was an investigation into drugs in sport last year, we got a range of scientists to do stories explaining, say, what peptides and anti-aging drugs were and what they did. When there's a public debate around a carbon tax, we've got an expert on taxation policy to write a piece about how taxation policy works. When it comes to asylum seeker policy, we've had experts on law of the sea writing about that, or when Fukushima happens, we get somebody explaining, the impact of radiation on the human body. Our material is designed to be able to be read by anybody who's sort of curious and wants to know, understand what's going on there. Hello?
Yeah? Sorry.
Yes, sorry, yeah.
We had just a bit of a technical glitch there. Misha, in terms of the site, what were some of the challenges that you experienced in setting this business up? There must have been many.
Oh, yeah, there were lots. Let me just go back a second and answer another question you asked, first of all, which was sort of how did the idea come about, and then I'll try to answer the question about the challenges.
Sure.
But first of all, it really came about through some conversations between a colleague of mine, Andrew Jaspin, who is a former editor of The Age newspaper, and Gwyn Davis, who's the Vice-Chancellor of Melbourne University. And Andrew was working on a project with Gwyn about sort of promoting and unlocking the expertise of what university academics did. And Andrew started walking around the university and he thought, well, a university is very much like a newsroom. In my newsroom at The Age, I've got a health desk and a law and justice desk, and I've got a business department. And if I look at the university, well, there's a economics faculty, and there's a law faculty, and there's a health and medicine faculty. So Andrew sort of had this idea of, like, rather than treating every story as something that should be done by a journalist who basically, phones up or contacts or goes out and interviews people who actually know what they're talking about, why not get the people who know what they're talking about to actually write articles, go direct to the source, and turn universities really into a giant newsroom. So you're using all this expertise all of the time to inform public discussion. And that really was basically the idea. And he was having some conversations with Peter Doherty, the Nobel laureate, and he was sort of saying, look, I'm having some troubles communicating with the media. A journalist comes and interviews me about, a matter of science, and I'll give an interview, and I'll go home and I think to myself, my God, how bad's it going to be? How are they going to get it wrong and sort of misquote me in the paper tomorrow? And he said, look, what I'd really prefer is, rather than the journalist sitting across the desk from me and trying to fire questions at me in an adversarial way. What if the journalist actually came and sat beside me and helped me write and communicate and get my ideas out? And that really was, those sort of two conversations with the genesis of the idea, using the university as a giant newsroom, and trying to create a better relationship between experts, people who spend their lifetime studying particular areas and have a wealth of knowledge to bring, and the media and the public sphere. That was the idea. The difficulty, of course, is that journalism all over the world, business models are falling apart. Nobody knows how journalists are going to make money anymore. There are lots of innovative ideas, but one of the really key difficulties is how to monetize them. Online advertising is very difficult and often doesn't work. Other revenue streams and approaches have been questionable. The way we went about it was setting up our organisation as a sort of service delivery organisation for universities. So we have a subscription model where there's 39 universities in Australia. We encourage every university to subscribe to our service, and each university that subscribes pays a rolling annual fee, which will be somewhere between about $50,000 and $150,000 to be part of the conversation. And then we pour that money and we use it to pay editors who do the work that we do. We also get some money from government and some money from philanthropic and corporate sources. And we have a jobs board as well, which provides another revenue stream. But the key model really is a sort of subscription model where the universities are sort of funding us to provide a service which enables their academics to engage better with the community and better with public debate.
It's fantastic and just so needed. And I'm wondering, is this based on any other model that you've seen around the world, or was this something unique to what you and Andrew created?
No, it's pretty unique. In actual fact, we've been exporting the ideas. So we've set up a site in the UK, which has been, it's sort of a semi-autonomous organisation in the UK, but they're licensing our sort of software and our model, and they've got funding from the UK government and a number of universities over there. We're also developing projects for expanding this model into the US and India, and we're currently also appointing a Jakarta editor, so to get somebody into Indonesia. And what we're trying to do really is create, in a way, a global knowledge network of really high quality authenticated content. So one of the problems you run into online and generally is there's a lot of people talking, but you don't necessarily know if they know what they're talking about, if they have relevant expertise, if they've got any authority. With our site, everybody who writes as an academic, their credentials are freely available. They will sign a disclosure statement so that you can be aware of any conflict of interest. So we feel like we've got really good authoritative sort of quotable information that people can pass on. And we're trying to create a global network of academics so we can have the best minds from the US, the UK, hopefully South Africa, India, around the globe.
Excellent. Well done. And I, we touched on this a second ago, but what were some of the initial challenges? Like I imagine getting the universities over the line to pay that kind of fee, was that an issue, or did they willingly come to the party?
Some willingly came to the party and some didn't, and that really was our biggest problem. One thing we had to decide was how we were going to structure our organisation editorially and how we were going to structure it commercially. And editorially we made a decision that we wanted to feature the best academics from any university in the country, irrespective of what university they worked for. We felt that if readers saw this as a PR or promotional exercise for universities, they wouldn't trust it and it wouldn't be valuable to them. So what we did was set up a policy where all the editors we employed, we said, say you're doing a story about Fukushima, go out and find the best expert on the impact of radiation on the human body wherever they are. The downside of that is that of the 39 universities in Australia, they all get the benefit of the service, whether or not they pay. So we had, one of those problems, business model problems, where we're trying to convince people to come on board in a relationship where they pay an annual fee to us in circumstances where they're already getting the benefits of the service, the key benefits of the service. Universities that subscribe do get additional benefits like media training and metrics, and there are some other bits and pieces that are packaged in. but really the key fundamental benefit, which is the media exposure, having your article published and then being interviewed on the ABC and having it republished in, Fairfax Papers or in the West Australian or whatever it might be, those benefits were available to everybody. So it did create a difficulty in our model in terms of convincing universities to sign on when they had access to the service already.
That would be a fundamental issue, I imagine. And do you want to name and shame any universities that haven't come on board, or have they all come on board?
Well, there's 39 unis in Australia, and currently we've got 29, I think. So there's only 10 to go. And we've tried to do it, there are certain points when, we were wondering about how we were going to go about doing this and, we're frustrated, and there was some talk about, ways of emphasising universities that were effectively not contributing or freeloading, on the servers. But we decided not to go down that path. We just thought it's better to try to just continue to do a good job, really be positive, and hope that people will eventually see the value, and they have. And we were very lucky because very early on there are a number of sort of far-thinking organisations that could see the value of this, that were actually prepared to fund it in quite a big way, more than our annual subscriptions, to help set it up, and that really helped get the others on. So Monash in Melbourne University in Melbourne, the CSIRO was a founding partner, put in a lot of money to help us start up. Other universities, University of Western Australia, University of Technology in Sydney. So we really relied on those organisations that were really committed to the project as a public good idea, and were interested in supporting it because they thought it was good for the whole sector, not just because they felt it would benefit their particular institution. And I think the others have sort of seen that, and they've sort of, I think, responded to that leadership and understood that this is, a good thing, and they really should get behind it.
And I'm really interested, Misha, in terms of how you actually presented this idea to them. Someone had to be on the road, obviously making these contacts, doing the presentations. Can you tell us a little about how that actually happened? What were some of the steps you took to do that sales job, really, which is what it is, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's a tricky sales job because, like I said, it's you're selling a car that you're already letting people drive around in. The way we did it was very high-level contact and really networking. It was sort of working off networks, so getting introductions from one vice-chancellor to another vice-chancellor, and really just presenting the idea and just being incredibly open about what we are and what we're trying to achieve and the limitations. I mean, when we were feeling like the business model was a problem and that we were struggling to convince some universities to come on board because they were already receiving the benefits, we sort of went to many of our partners and said, look, this is the problem we've got. We can't work out what to do. Should we start excluding universities that don't contribute? How do you think we should go about this? And they were very strong with us. They said, we think that this is a public good project. It will only work if you include all universities. We're happy to continue to support it, and we will help you by introducing you to this person or that person, who then you can talk to and try to convince to sign on. So it's really been a very difficult sales project, which has taken an incredible amount of skill because it really is a sort of a hearts and minds public good proposition. It's not a if you support this with X amount of money, you will get this back. And in a context where universities are competing fiercely against each other, they're often looking at their budgets very closely in terms of, if I spend this money here, will this help me market myself? Will this help me attract students from the university down the road? And we sort of had to take our offering entirely out of that context and say, look, here's something we're doing for the whole sector. It's going to benefit all the academics at the university. It's going to benefit you. It is a significant advantage. You should get behind it. But it's not going to help you win those sort of smaller level battles that you're facing in a competitive education environment.
And Misha, you're a journalist and you might have a business background as well, but operationally I imagine, was this something that you did personally or did you have a team? Was it just you and Andrew? Can you tell me a little bit about the foundation members of the conversation?
Yes, so it really was Andrew and somebody called Jack Retman, who was a co-founder with Andrew, who had a background in business from Yahoo in the UK. And they really did the initial going around and sort of getting the seed funding to set it up. I was employed, I think I was sort of the first staff member employed in terms of, my job was, I was employed from the ABC. I've been working on a range of editorial shows, things like 7:30 Report and Media Watch and some of the other things. And my role really was developing the editorial product and recruiting the editorial team and doing that side of it. So most of the sales work we developed was done early on by Jack and Andrew, and very, very early on, within a few months of launching, or maybe even by the time we've launched, we hired a commercial director called Lisa Watts, who had been the CEO of a website, a very successful website called Arts Hub, and before that she'd worked running properties for Fairfax. So she had a very good background sort of in online sales. So, and Lisa is still with us to this day, and still sort of this is her role, so she does most of this sort of high-level negotiation, sort of sales, commercial work.
Excellent. And are there plans to take this to the public in terms of making it, I can't see the point because everyone can access, this is correct, isn't it? Anyone can access any aspect of the content on your site. There's no paywalls or anything like that. Am I right?
Yeah, and that's actually fundamental again to the business model, because what we do is we offer really editorial services to academics who want to engage in public debate but maybe wouldn't know how to do it in a timely way in the news cycle, might need some editing or help with their writing or sort of help launching themselves into the media. We provide them services. So I'm sorry, I've actually just lost track of your question. Say your question again.
Yeah, the question was, are there any paywalls? Is there anything hidden behind any of your walls? Is it all completely accessible to anybody?
Yeah. Sorry, yeah, so just going back to that. So basically, I'm sort of going to come around this a long way, but it's pretty important to sort of think about. So basically what we're doing is offering a service to academics. We're not paying academics to write for us. So the idea is that what they get from writing for us is the public exposure. It's the tens of thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands of readers that they get for the articles they publish. It's the media exposure. It's all of that. Now, if we were trying to put a paywall around the product or sell the product, and then we were making money from selling that product, that would change the whole dynamic. Suddenly, it would be a situation where the academics, could quite reasonably say, well, we should be paid for the expertise that we're providing to you, which you're then on selling. So the whole model is about free content without paywalls. Everything that we publish is free to read, but also it's free to republish. And we have a dedicated editor whose job it is pretty much full-time to make sure that our content gets picked up by other media outlets. So our content is republished by sites like Business Spectator and Climate Spectator and Fairfax sites and the Brisbane Times and the West Australian newspaper, and ABC republishes quite a bit of our content. We've got an ongoing relationship with SBS. Because in a way we're agnostic about where the articles that academics write for us appear. We don't mind if they're in other media outlets, as long as the academics are getting the exposure. The service we offer them is the exposure, is the being part of the public debate. If they're part of the public debate on our website, which is getting around about 1.6 million unique browsers a month, which is a very sizable audience in itself, or if they're reading that content on another website, that's just as good. We're happy either way. But because of that, the whole philosophy is about the content being free at every point. Free to republish, free to read, free to circulate, free all the way through, and that's really the core to our model.
And I imagine the universities are quite thrilled that their academics are getting that exposure. It's a really unusual model, and it's really quite refreshing to hear it. And it did take that high moral ground to some degree in terms of the universities taking on the payment, the subscription, to make it available to everyone else. Of course, it's in their interest, but just a really unusual model. And did that just come, or did that come through lots of discussions and toing and froing? How hard was it to come up with this business model, which was quite unique?
Oh, it was very difficult, and I think that we, early on we were sort of feeling our way and working it out, and we had lots of debates about how we would support the business and organise the business and structure the business and what would work and what wouldn't. And developing a revenue model for a business like this is very difficult. And we were also unsure about the decisions we ended up making about making it all free and whether that would actually work, whether we could get sufficient revenue. It turns out actually to have been a really, so far all evidence seems to be it was the right thing to do, because it means that where we do go to supporters, it's a much clearer proposition. So, for example, setting up in the US, we're talking to a lot of very large foundations, and they say that if there were profit motives, if you were selling the content, they couldn't support it. But because it is a clear public good proposition, it's much easier for them to sort of get behind it. So, yeah, I mean, these decisions sort of don't come out of anybody sort of having some sort of genius foresight. They come out of trial and error and just seeing what works and just trying to think your way through as best you can.
Now, let's talk about traffic. You've talked about the 1.6 million unique visitors, which is a great figure. How have you driven traffic to your site? Obviously, you've done it through your affiliates, the West Australian Times and what have you, but just talk us through some of the strategies you've used directly.
Sure. Sorry, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, good, okay. We haven't spent a cent above the line in terms of marketing, branding, campaigns, any of that sort of stuff. The way we've done it is all via using social media and promoting our product. So every time we publish a story, we have a sort of social media editor whose role it is to tweet it and put it on Facebook and pitch it to republishing partners like Mamamia or Climate Spectator or the Brisbane Times or whatever it may be. What that means is that people discover us via discovering our content. So you don't build a reputation by telling people what you're going to do or how good you're going to be or whatever else. They actually build a relationship with you by seeing you do good things, by reading your articles, by hopefully enjoying them and passing them on. And so we've worked really hard doing that. We've had sort of teams of editors and interns who basically every day spend hours and hours and hours engaging in conversations, promoting our content into either social media conversations or contexts or forums or other places where we know it's going to get picked up and republished and talked about. And we've built our whole audience really entirely via that strategy.
Wow, that's really impressive. And so no AdWords, no, buying of lists or anything like that. It's all just been organic.
I think that we did try maybe 2 AdWords or something once about a year ago and spent maybe $1,000 or some small amount. We just experimented, but basically no. The whole thing has been based around a sort of organic social media model. One of the advantages, of course, of the media business is that it is all about audience. So you're building an audience. You've got a platform. You can talk to that audience. You can mobilize that audience. And you're dealing with people, your media staff are people who have skills in engaging with audiences. So it's a bit of a unique business in that way as well. I mean, I imagine that using sort of the social media strategy that we've used would be much harder, for a business, say, I don't know, selling orange juice or something. You'd struggle because you don't have the content to inject into the conversations, whereas what we're doing every day is we start our day with a news conference and we look at what's happening, and whether it be the detail on the Closing the Gap report or the bushfires, we're commissioning stories off what's in the news, which people are going to pass on and be interested in.
Interesting. So, Misha, what's your take on the future? This is not quite online journalism, is it? I mean, what is your take on where this is headed? Because you're effectively, from what I'm hearing, providing free content to the newspapers. So where do you see this headed in terms of the future of the print press, print newspapers?
Geez, it's a good question. I don't know. No one knows. People say they know and they pretend to know, but everybody's making it up as they go along. It is been an extraordinary period of change for the newspaper industry. It's been going on really for a decade now, but the biggest changes have been hit Australia in the last 3 or 4 years, as probably already seen with massive downsizing at sort of News Limited and Fairfax. There's talk now that those mastheads will be online only, even by the end of the year potentially, for some of the Fairfax mastheads. So You know, and they're all experimenting with paywalls and whether they work. There's a lot of information coming out that some of those paywall experiments haven't been as successful as people hoped. So it's a really interesting, exciting and confusing time. Nobody knows what's going to work. Nobody knows what a sustainable business model is. You know, our business model is incredibly unique because it is based around the academic community and unlocking the value of that community for a broader readership in the broader community. It's only one model. It can only do certain things. I mean, there's some things that possibly we're not so well positioned to do. But I've got no idea what's going to happen in the media. I just know that we're in for a continued period of very, very fast change.
And in a way, what you're saying is that your income is capped, isn't it? Because you've got 39 universities paying a certain fee. So you know what your budgets are going to be unless, do you plan to expand that, you've talked about internationally, but just within Australia, is there an issue that you know that your income is capped?
Not, I mean, yes and no. I mean, obviously we're keen to keep growing our revenues. We do have other revenue streams. We have a jobs board that we've been developing, which is now starting to get quite a bit of traffic and starting to bring in some revenue, which is good, and that might continue to grow as a revenue source. We're also looking at some events listings work. We do have corporate sponsors who provide some money and some government support as well. So what we're really doing is a mixed strategy. I mean, the core of it is the subscription model for the universities, but that doesn't cover all of our costs, and there are other sort of revenue strategies involved. And I guess to some extent we're playing it by ear. I mean, what ends up being the mix in 2 years' time or 3 years' time might be quite different from what the mix is today in terms of how we source our revenue. The one thing that we haven't really pursued vigorously is advertising, because online advertising revenues are anemic, certainly compared to what you'd get for print. So, you know, by the time you've employed an advertising manager and gone out and sold the spots, even with quite a sizable audience like ours, we didn't see it as a high-value proposition. And of course, it creates other problems in terms of, you know, reader experience. People don't like ads. You have to break up your pages in certain ways. A lot of people are very frustrated reading newspaper websites because of all their pop-ups. So we decided not to go down that particular path. But the ultimate mix of revenue that we end up with, I mean, there are other possibilities. So it's not capped so much, but it is an open question. You know, how we develop our funding streams going forward.
Mm. And in terms of video, is that something you might be moving towards, or is it going to be strictly print? I mean, you know,
we've just hired a
2D
multimedia editor who's starting probably in 3 or 4 weeks' time, and we do want to be doing more video. We already co-produce some video with SBS, but we don't think that we're doing it as well as we'd like, and we're not doing as much as we'd like. So we do want to be doing more video and also podcasting, more audio as well. One of the key things in my view online is you've got to think about your audience. And you know, whenever I think about a reader of a site like The Conversation, I think of somebody who's in an office, you know, probably a white-collar worker who has a boss sort of, you know, floating around behind her or him, and they're sort of telling themselves that they're reading an article partly because it's work-related or it's, you know, sort of enriching or interesting or whatever it might be. Because of that, I think that when people read online, they really like things that they can control. It needs to be quick. You need to be able to digest the information really quickly. A print article is very good for that because you can scroll, you can skip paragraphs, you can read it really slowly and in depth, or you can read it really quickly and just you know, basically form a summary in your own mind of the information provided. I think that video is not as good for that. So, you know, talking head video often isn't very interesting, doesn't work very well. So we've got to really work very hard to find ways to make video work and to make it engaging and to make it actually a useful tool for conveying information to our readers.
And Misha, I know you're not strictly a businessman, even though you've obviously created this amazing product. What lessons do you think online entrepreneurs could learn from you, or what advice would you share with someone who's thinking about setting up some kind of online endeavour based on what you've learned in this experience?
Oh God, that's good questions. I think there are a few things that we've learned along the way about how to use social media effectively that are really valuable. about how you talk to your audiences, how you treat people with respect, how you let people in. I think that there's a sort of a new dynamic. If you want to be successful online, one thing is, being open pretty much about everything you can possibly be open about. So, if you have challenges facing your business, if you're being criticised, for example, we publish your critics and get people to comment. I think that level of openness and transparency is really important. For us, it's been all about trust with our academics, that they trust us to respect them, not to misquote them. We give them final sign-off on all the articles they write with us. So it's about sort of building strong relationships where there's an element of trust, and that's for us not just the relationships with the academics but also with our readers. So we try to have full transparency and disclosure statements, and funding that might affect anything somebody's written, what their qualifications are. I think that building trust is a really key thing. It's a principle of any business, which is that we try to build strong relationships based on trust. But it's particularly important in an online environment where there are so many people and there are so many things that maybe aren't so trustworthy to be really strict about your rules and protocols and your values around your brand and what you stand for. And that's incredibly valuable, not just in terms of getting buy-in from audiences and for us, in our case, universities, but also staff and everybody involved with the organisation. If they actually can see, transparently what you do and what you believe in and what you stand for, and you live by those values, it actually makes a massive difference. It sounds sort of a bit like business speak, but I think that idea of like having values and working by and living by those values is really important to ensuring that people are, buy into and are committed to what you're trying to do.
Yeah, and I think it's, businesses have talked about it being transparent and open, but they haven't really been, but they've acted as if they are, whereas what you're doing and what you're saying is it's all open, and in a way that makes life a lot easier because you haven't got to pretend to be something you're not. It's all there. Take it or leave it, like it or not, it's there. And I think that must, free you up to some degree to just go ahead and do what you're planning to do.
That's right. And I think the other thing is you need to be really honest with yourself and with your customers or your audiences about what you're doing. So one thing that we do is we try to engage with our community. So if we've got, I don't know, we're looking for academics to write on a particular story, we might post something on social media and say, hey, can you suggest good ideas for articles, say, on Australia in the Asian century? And when academics respond, we'll get back to them and we'll say, yes, we're going to use that idea, no, we're not going to use this one for this reason, or whatever. But you need to be honest, and it needs to be real. I've noticed, for example, I'm a cricket fan. I've been following Cricket Australia's got an app, and they sort of do this thing where they try to engage with their audiences. So they're constantly asking them these questions, do you think Michael Clark should bat or bowl? Will so-and-so get 100? But the consultation is so meaningless. Like the information, they don't do anything with it. It's just like shouting into a void. You can sort of tell that people don't feel the value in it. So if you're going to, say, for example, consult with your audience, you've actually got to show them not just that you've consulted, but that you've taken them seriously. You've got to follow through. You've got to tell them whether what you've done with the ideas that they've given you. You sort of got to walk the walk of what you promised to do.
And of course that's very time consuming, I imagine, and it requires resources. Has that been an issue, finding the staff and paying for the staff to have that level of engagement?
Yes, it has. But for us it's very simple. Our business is very low cost. We've got an office and some computers, but really it's all staff. Like almost 90% of the budget's staff, or probably even more. So it is a people business. It's driven by people who are passionate about what they're doing. I think once you've got the buy-in, like if you do, live by what you promise to live by, people are sort of passionate and they come in with an energy that is incredibly valuable to you because they are committed to doing these things and getting it right. And our editors, they all work at nights and on weekends, and I'm not saying it's ideal. I actually discourage them often from doing that. But responding to academics, following up story ideas when need be, getting back to people quickly, being courteous, being respectful. They're things that are really, we value incredibly highly. But it's easier sort of to, it's easier to do that when everybody sort of shares the same values.
Of course. And now one question that's been sort of bubbling away for me, and that is, does anyone not like what you're doing? Politicians come to mind. I don't know why I'm saying that, but is there any group that is inherently out to lose by what you're doing? Because what you're doing is offering, you know, informed, you know, educated debate, and there's got to be someone who's going to lose out in that equation. Is there anyone that you can, or not anyone, but any group that's going to be, you know, the loser in this context?
Sure. We've been criticised on a few different grounds, one of which is that as a media organisation we can crowd out commercial competitors. So there was a piece actually today in The Age by Gay Alcorn talking about the ABC and saying that the ABC, by virtue of its sort of size and scale, can make it very difficult for other media outlets to be successful. And we've had some criticism. We were criticised in that article as well. I actually think it's a wrong-headed argument, because in actual fact all of our content is free for any other media outlet to use. So we're actually providing a bridge and providing free content for media outlets, not really competing against them. I mean, media outlets, generally speaking, are advertising businesses. We, apart from the jobs board, don't do advertising. What we're doing is, you know, providing content, and that content's available to them. So I'm not quite sure that argument actually stands scrutiny, but we have been criticised, you know, because we are sort of a public sector, in a way, organisation, as being an organisation that might make life difficult for commercial rivals. The other criticism that is made of us from time to time is that academics tend to be lefties or left-wing or bleeding hearts or whatever you want to say, and that a website that publishes academics and researchers is going to lean one way or the other or be politically biased. Again, you know, it's a criticism that's made. I think, you know, people are entitled to make it. It's you know, it's totally a matter of opinion. In my view, we have an obligation to try to source a diversity of views from academics and try to have a wide spectrum of opinion. That's what we try to do. If the views of the experts do run one particular way on a particular issue, our site will reflect that, because we publish a wide range of experts. We've got something like about 9,000 or 10,000 academics registered on our site, and we're always looking for new voices. So if people do detect a political bias one way or the other, it's certainly not our intent. We're going to, you know, as wide a group of people as possible. But I guess that's the other sort of criticism that we get occasionally, that, you know, publishing academics could sort of skew one way politically.
Misha, this has been absolutely fascinating, and I just want to congratulate you on creating this amazing business model and service, really. So thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
No worries. Thank you very much.